Usually when we talk about martial arts or like movement practices, especially when that phrase internal energy gets thrown around.
Oh, yeah. That's a very loaded term.
Right. There is this massive, just unavoidable expectation of mysticism. I mean, you hear those words, and instantly you picture, like, a guy on a foggy mountaintop with a flowing white beard.
Exactly. It's a trope for a reason.
It is. And the ingrained assumption is always that to even begin to understand what this master is doing, you have to, I don't know, meditate under a freezing waterfall for 20 years.
Which, honestly, it creates a massive barrier to entry. I mean, the entire concept just gets placed firmly outside the realm of regular human experience.
Right, totally.
We live in a world where we like things we can measure, test, quantify. But internal energy, it's almost universally presented as something you just have to blindly believe in.
It becomes this ethereal, untouchable thing. People call it chi, or life force, or this invisible aura that surrounds the practitioner.
And if you question it,
Oh, right. The traditional response is always that, well, your energy just isn't refined enough to sense it yet.
which is an incredibly convenient defense mechanism, for any system that doesn't want to be rigorously tested.
Yeah, it really is.
It builds this insulated echo chamber where nobody can ever be wrong because the criteria for success are totally invisible.
Okay, well, let's unpack this. Because today, for you listening, we are tearing down that echo chamber. We're doing a deep dive into an excerpt from a truly fascinating text called Stronger Without the Muscle.
It's a fantastic read.
It really is. And the mission of this deep dive is to aggressively strip away all of that mountaintop mysticism. I mean, we are looking at a strictly biomechanical, peer-reviewed level definition of internal energy.
No magic.
Zero magic. No invisible auras, no gurus. We are talking about meat, bone, gravity, and physics.
And the stakes presented in this text, they're incredibly high. I mean, the author comes out swinging with a very bold claim right out of the gate.
Yeah, they don't hold back.
Not at all. They argue that this internal energy isn't just some, subjective feeling you get after an hour of deep breathing.
Right.
It is a physical, undeniable reality that mechanically makes your movement stronger, faster, and exponentially more effortless.
All three of those at the exact same time.
All three. And crucially, and this is the part that really shifts the ground under your feet, honestly, they claim it is testable in the first 10 minutes of training.
Wait, 10 minutes?
Not 10 years of sweeping a courtyard. 10 minutes.
Okay, I have to push back hard on that right away. I mean, if someone tells me I can test their revolutionary hidden human energy in 10 minutes, my immediate thought is that I'm listening to, like, a late-night infomercial selling me a secret workout gadget.
Which is completely fair.
Right. Because if this system is so superior, and the power output is supposedly so much higher, why hasn't this taken over every elite sports discipline?
That's the million-dollar question.
Why isn't every single Olympic weightlifter and MMA fighter operating this way?
That is a completely valid reaction. And actually, the author leans heavily into that exact skepticism. You have to bring your skepticism to this text. It's pretty much required reading.
Good, because I'm definitely bringing it.
The distinction here, though, is between mastering a system and verifying a mechanism. The author is not promising you're going to become a grandmaster in 10 minutes.
Right, okay.
They're saying the mechanism, the actual physical engine of this energy can be demonstrated on your own body, and you can feel its structural effects immediately.
I see.
To use, like, a modern analogy, you don't need to know how to write the source code for a new software update to immediately feel that your phone is running faster after you install it.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. You swipe the screen,
Yeah.
and the latency is either gone or it isn't.
Exactly. You are testing the output of the system, not your own ability to wield it perfectly.
That makes a lot more sense.
Because think about it. If a teacher tells you to wait 10 years to see proof that their supposedly superior engine even turns over, you should probably just walk out of their garage.
Yeah, keep your money and run.
Right. The currency of truth in this author's framework is, quote, force felt and force delivered.
Force felt and force delivered. I like that.
If I strike you using this biomechanical internal energy, you shouldn't have to meditate to feel it. You should feel the physical impact of a heavier, faster, structurally dominant strike.
No belief required.
None. The text is fiercely critical of traditional views of internal energy precisely because they're used to explain everything while proving absolutely nothing.
I think we've all seen those videos online, right? The ones where a so-called master waves his hand in the air and, like, 5 students dramatically launch themselves across the room.
Doing backflips and everything.
Yeah, it's absurd.
Those videos are the perfect example of the accountability crisis in martial arts. I mean, those are compliant students. They're socially and psychologically conditioned to fall over because they want the system to be true.
They're bought in.
Exactly. And when skeptics call it out, the defense is always that the skeptic doesn't have the right state of mind to understand it.
It just becomes this closed loop that violently rejects any outside testing.
Precisely. But the author of our source text, they demand that we separate what a thing is from what it does. If it's real, it must deliver measurable force against a non-compliant, resisting target.
So, for you listening right now, I want you to adopt that mindset. The author is demanding strict, unforgiving definitions here.
Yes, very strict.
So before we can even test this new, supposedly superior engine, we have to establish the baseline. We need to figure out what we're currently doing with our bodies that requires such a massive upgrade in the first place.
Right. What's broken?
Yeah, what is the standard human movement pattern doing wrong?
Well, to answer that, we have to examine how the text redefines 2 critical terms, natural movement and cultural movement.
Okay.
And I guarantee you, their definition of natural movement is not what the wellness industry has sold you.
Because when I hear natural movement, I immediately picture like someone doing yoga on a beach at sunrise.
Right.
Or maybe running barefoot through a pristine forest. I associate it with things that are comfortable or beautiful or, primitive.
That is absolutely the commercialized version of the concept. But the text explicitly states that comfort, beauty, primitive aesthetics, those are just side effects.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're totally irrelevant to the mechanics. The strict definition they provide is, and I'll quote here, movement closest to the inborn, performed under existing conditions in order to accomplish a set motor task.
Closest to the inborn. Let's dig into that phrase. What exactly constitutes an inborn movement?
So we need to differentiate between inborn locomotor routes and just simple autonomic reflexes.
Okay, what's the difference?
Well, think about a newborn baby. A baby kicks, reaches, pushes, and grips long before anyone teaches them how.
Right, they just do it.
Exactly. Those aren't learned behaviors from watching a YouTube tutorial, right? They are the pure expression of a central movement pattern that's wired into the nervous system.
So that's the inborn locomotor route.
Yes. But what's fascinating here is that not every inborn reflex counts as natural movement under this framework.
Wait, why not?
Because think about blinking your eyes or drawing a breath. Those are inborn reflexes, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But they don't share the goal of locomotion. They aren't trying to move your center of mass through 3-dimensional space to accomplish a motor task.
Like crawling or walking or striking or lifting.
Exactly. Natural movement has to stay functionally close to that original, uncorrupted locomotor source.
Okay, so if natural movement is this pure inborn pattern that we all inherently possess at birth, what happens to it? I mean, why am I sitting here with back pain, struggling to carry groceries up the stairs efficiently? Where did that perfect pattern go?
It gets buried. It gets buried under what the author calls cultural movement.
Cultural movement. Okay, define that.
This is the inborn pattern, overlaid, distorted, and frankly just paved over by learned technique, daily habits, specific athletic styles, or simply societal mimicry.
Mimicry.
Yeah. From the moment we were born, human beings possess this incredible, survival-driven gift for mimicry. We watch our parents walk, so we mimic their gait.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Right. We're forced to sit in rigid chairs for 8 hours a day at school, which fundamentally changes our pelvic tilt. We hunch over keyboards.
I'm literally adjusting my posture right now as you say that.
We all do it. And beyond just daily habits, we adopt the movement patterns dictated by our culture's specific idea of physical fitness.
Wait, let me challenge that. Are you saying that when I go to a gym and I hire an expensive personal trainer and I spend months learning the absolute perfect biomechanical form for a heavy barbell deadlift, I might actually be learning a cultural movement?
Yes.
But that overwrites my inborn biology, because I've always been told that perfect gym form is like the peak of human biomechanics.
That is the uncomfortable truth this text exposes. Even the most pristine, Instagram-perfect gym form is overwhelmingly a cultural movement.
How so?
Think about what your trainer tells you to do before you lift a heavy barbell. What's the first instruction?
They tell you to brace.
Exactly.
Yeah, they say tighten your core, pack your lats down, squeeze your glutes, take a huge breath, and hold it.
You turn yourself into a solid block of concrete.
You really do.
You are trained to meet a heavy load by aggressively contracting muscle at every single joint. You're using muscular contraction to fight the load.
Yeah, to protect the spine, right?
That's the cultural rationale, but the author argues that this bracing mechanism is a learned cultural response to stress. By squeezing every muscle to create stability, you are paying a massive, unnecessary metabolic cost.
You're burning a ton of energy just standing there.
Exactly. You are rapidly fatiguing your muscles. And, perhaps most importantly for martial arts, you're introducing severe delays before any functional force can even begin to move your skeleton.
So by trying to be safe and strong, I'm basically training my nervous system to use the most expensive, inefficient, gas-guzzling engine possible.
You are training yourself to answer every physical challenge with localized muscular tension. And that sets up the entire premise of the text. We desperately need a better engine.
Okay, so if cultural movement relies on muscle contraction to generate force and stability, we have to look at what natural movement relies on to do the same job.
Right.
Because if we're stripping away the muscle, what is actually left to generate force? We can't just be hollow meat sacks.
No, we definitely can't.
This is where we replace the mystical chi with actual anatomy. The text redefines internal energy as strictly non-muscular energy.
Yes.
Which sounds like a contradiction. I mean, how do you move a human body without using the muscles?
It requires a paradigm shift in how you view your anatomy. It is not about moving without muscle that would just be paralysis.
Right, obvious.
It's about recognizing that skeletal muscle is incredibly slow to recruit, it's fast to fatigue, and it's metabolically expensive.
So what's the alternative?
The internal energy the author is describing, the energy they refer to under the umbrella of their specific ISAI framework, which is their internal martial arts system. It's the coordinated output of 3 specific non-muscular forces.
Okay, what are they?
Pistons, springs, and gravity.
Pistons, springs, and gravity. Okay, let's break those down, starting with the pistons. Because when I think of my torso, I usually think of my spine as a post.
A post.
Yeah, like a tent pole that just keeps my rib cage from crashing down into my pelvis.
That structural visualization is incredibly common, and anatomically, it is deeply flawed.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The trunk of the human body is not a solid post. It is a set of carefully regulated, pressurized cavities.
Pressurized cavities.
Think about your abdomen. You have the diaphragm forming the ceiling, the pelvic floor forming the basement, and the abdominal wall wrapping around the sides.
Right, like a cylinder.
Exactly. When you properly pressurize that cavity, and I don't mean by sucking your gut in, but by regulating the internal pressure, it acts exactly like a hydraulic piston. It can bear an immense amount of load without requiring your lower back muscles to seize up in a panic.
That makes total sense. It's like an unopened can of soda.
Yes.
You can literally stand on a full sealed aluminum can, and it won't crush because the internal pressure pushes back against the load.
But if you open it
and release the pressure, the can crumples instantly under your weight.
That is a brilliant analogy, and it goes even deeper than the abdominal cavity. You also have the intervertebral discs sitting between the vertebrae in your spine.
The little cushions.
Right. We culturally think of them just as passive shock absorbers, like the suspension in a car. But in this system, they are viewed as dynamically loaded structures that can actively store and redirect force.
Wait, really? The discs themselves?
Yes. When you move with the spine properly aligned, those discs compress and expand, transferring energy like a series of tiny hydraulic pumps.
So my torso is literally a series of pressurized cylinders. That fundamentally changes how I view my posture.
It should.
What of the springs? We've got pistons. What are the springs?
The springs are your connective tissues, primarily your tendons and your fascial network.
Fascia.
Tendons are composed of incredibly tough, highly elastic collagen fibers. When you put energy into them, either by stretching them rapidly under a load or by using gravity to drop your weight into them, they store that kinetic energy.
Like stretching a rubber band.
Exactly. And crucially, they return almost all of it. They have an incredibly high coefficient of restitution.
They bounce back.
They bounce back, and they release that stored energy far faster than a skeletal muscle could ever physically shorten.
Which brings us to the third element. Gravity. The absolute free lunch of the biomechanical world.
It really is a free lunch. Gravity is an inexhaustible, constant supply of kinetic energy, but it's only available to you if you allow the body to literally fall into its work.
What does that mean? fall into its work.
Think about how you walk up a flight of stairs. Most of us spend our entire lives fighting gravity, using our quadriceps and calves to painstakingly push our center of mass upward and forward.
Yeah, that's what we do.
We are constantly holding ourselves up against the Earth's pull.
But if you learn to harness it, you let your weight drop into the pistons, which loads the tendon springs, and you just ride the rebound.
Yes.
You aren't spending muscular energy to generate the force. You are using the Earth's gravitational pull to load your own biological slingshot.
You've captured the exact mechanism perfectly. So in this framework, what do you think the muscles are actually supposed to be doing?
Well, if the pistons are holding the structure, and the springs are storing the power, and gravity is providing the fuel, it sounds like the muscles are just along for the ride. Are they just steering?
Their role is radically redefined, but they are essential. The author argues that the only role skeletal muscles should play in heavy exertion is to hold a state, set the structural timing, and then instantly get out of the way.
Get out of the way.
Yes. Muscle tissue is incredibly fast at firing just enough to lock a joint into a specific angle to catch a load. But it should not be the primary driver of the heavy lifting or the explosive martial arts strike.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. I want to paint a picture for you listening right now. Think about a standard industrial forklift.
Okay, a forklift.
A forklift can lift an immense amount of weight, but it's incredibly slow, it is massively heavy, it has to rev up a loud engine, and it burns a tremendous amount of fuel just to lift a single pallet of bricks a few feet in the air.
Right.
That forklift represents the traditional, culturally trained, muscularly braced human body.
That is spot on.
Now, imagine a heavy-duty, high-tension pogo stick. When you jump on a pogo stick, gravity pulls your body weight down. That downward force compresses the heady spring at the bottom.
Yep.
The moment that spring reaches maximum compression, boom, it violently unspools and shoots you back up into the air. You didn't burn any biological fuel to get launched back up. You just rode the stored elastic energy.
Exactly.
The author of this text is practically screaming at us to stop operating our bodies like slow, gas-guzzling forklifts and start using them like biological pogo sticks.
The pogo stick analogy highlights the sheer efficiency of the internal system so well. You aren't forcing the bounce. You are allowing the mechanism to work unimpeded.
Exactly.
But let's take your analogy one step further. If you are on that pogo stick, and as you land, you tense up every muscle in your legs and try to violently push the pogo stick down with your own muscular force, what happens?
Oh, you completely kill the momentum.
Right.
You ruin the timing, you fight the spring, and the bounce just dies out. You just thud into the ground.
And that brings us to the single biggest hurdle in this entire physical framework. If this beautiful, efficient engine of pistons and springs is built into the anatomy of every single human being,
Why aren't we all naturally bouncing around like high-tension springs?
exactly. Why is it so incredibly difficult to actually do this in practice?
Because we can't stop pushing the pogo stick.
Precisely.
We have to learn how to keep the springs loaded without tensing our muscles. We have to figure out how to unlearn that cultural brace.
And the text introduces a foundational concept to solve this, which they call Maximum Dynamic Relaxation, or MDR.
Maximum dynamic relaxation. I mean, that sounds completely contradictory. How can a state of relaxation be dynamic? Especially when, say, someone is trying to punch you in the face.
It is vital to clarify that MDR is not going limp. That is the most common trap beginners fall into.
Okay, because that's what it sounds like.
Right. But if you just completely relax and go limp, your spine crumbles, the tendon springs unspool without catching any load, and your abdominal pistons lose all their internal pressure.
You turn into a puddle on the floor.
Exactly. A total puddle. You lose all structural integrity.
So it's not about being a wet noodle.
Far from it. MDR is the act of holding the absolute least amount of muscular tension required to maintain your structural integrity.
Just enough to not collapse.
Yes, just enough so that the springs stay loaded and the pistons stay charged, ready to release at a microsecond's notice. It's living on the exact, razor-thin threshold between muscular tension and structural collapse.
I want you to try a thought experiment right now while you're listening. Think about how tightly you grip your steering wheel when you are driving in heavy, stressful traffic.
Oh, white-knuckling it.
Yeah. Or pay attention to how you are holding your shoulders right now while you listen to this. Are they creeping up toward your ears?
Probably.
We are chronically, perpetually braced. We meet every single stressor in our lives, whether it's a heavy barbell, a difficult conversation, or an incoming punch, by unconsciously tightening our muscles.
It's a universal response.
The author is asking us to let go of a lifetime of neurological bracing, but without collapsing our skeletal structure.
And that paradox is precisely why this system is so incredibly difficult for practitioners to adopt at first. We talked earlier about the 10-minute test, right?
Yeah, the infomercial claim.
Right. The physical results of this mechanism taking over those can be demonstrated and felt in minutes. But the neural unlearning of your cultural habits,
That takes longer.
that unlearning takes years of brutal, frustrating practice.
Can we talk about the neuroscience of that for a second? Why is it so hard to just tell your brain to relax?
It comes down to your sensory feedback loops.
Okay.
When you suddenly load a muscle, say, catching a heavy medicine ball that someone throws at you,
Yeah.
your muscle spindles detect the rapid stretch. They immediately send a panic signal to your spinal cord, which sends a reflex arc right back, telling the muscle to violently contract to protect the joint.
The stretch reflex.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is the stretch reflex. It is a deeply ingrained cultural and biological habit to rely on this muscular contraction for safety.
But there's another system, right?
Yes. On the other hand, you have the Golgi tendon organs, which sense tension in the tendons.
Okay.
When tension gets too high, they actually inhibit muscle contraction to prevent you from tearing the muscle off the bone.
Wow. So they force you to relax.
Right. Achieving maximum dynamic relaxation is essentially about retraining your nervous system to dial down the panic response of the muscle spindles and trusting the connective tissue and the skeletal alignment to take the load.
You have to convince your brain that you aren't going to break if you don't squeeze your muscles.
Exactly.
That sounds terrifying.
Yep.
You are basically rewiring your most basic survival instincts. You must feel like you are constantly going to drop the weight or fall flat on your face.
You do. It feels incredibly unstable until you finally hit that threshold and you actually feel the springs catch you.
That's wild.
It is. And the text actually connects this state of MDR to an ancient Chinese philosophical concept, Wu Wei.
Wu Wei, which is traditionally translated as effortless action.
Yes. But true to form, the author ruthlessly strips away the poetry and the mysticism from term.
Yeah, because in traditional Taoist philosophy, Wu Wei can sound very vague.
Yeah.
It's usually described as going with the flow or acting without acting, like water moving around a rock.
Right, which sounds nice, but...
It sounds great, but it doesn't tell me how to throw a punch.
Exactly. The author repurposes the term brilliantly for the ISAI framework. In this mechanical system, Wu Wei has a literal, measurable definition. It is the near disappearance of muscular effort during heavy exertion.
Near disappearance.
Notice the careful phrasing there. They say near disappearance, not zero energy.
Because zero energy is the puddle.
Right. You still have to use some muscle to steer the structure. Your legs maintain a baseline tone. Your diaphragm controls the pressure. You need the minimal tension required to hold MDR.
But the heavy lifting.
The heavy, violent lifting is completely outsourced to gravity and the loaded fascial tissues. The body runs on its own dead weight and its elastic rebound, rather than its muscular contractions.
Okay, so we've established the engine. We have pistons, springs, and gravity, all governed by this state of maximum dynamic relaxation.
Yes.
But what does this actually mean when we put it into action against a resisting opponent? Once you achieve this state, what is the actual measurable payoff?
This is where it gets really fun.
Because the text dives deep into the mathematical physics of speed and power, and frankly, the numbers presented here are staggering.
The mathematics of this system are where the biomechanical argument truly overpowers the traditional muscular model. To understand the massive payoff, we have to look at the temporal cost of movement.
The cost in time.
Exactly. Every time you move your body, you pay a tax in time. And that tax comes in two distinct forms, latency and action.
Let's define those for the listener. Latency is the delay. It's the electromechanical lag before physical force even begins to manifest.
Right.
It is the time it takes for your brain to decide to move, send the electrical signal down the spinal cord, across the motor neurons to the muscle fibers, and for those fibers to finally start engaging.
Which takes time.
And action, on the other hand, is the physical time it takes for the muscle belly to actually shorten and build that force against a load.
So let's look at the data the author provides for a standard, culturally trained muscular movement.
Based on the text, muscular latency, that electrical delay before anything happens, takes about 30 to 100 milliseconds.
Right.
Once the signal arrives, the muscular action itself, the actual physical shortening of the muscle under load, takes another 100 to 200 milliseconds.
So if you put those together,
If you want to throw a purely muscular punch, the entire process takes anywhere from 130 to 300 milliseconds from decision to impact.
now we compare that timeline to the elastic body. utilizing the tendon springs under maximum dynamic relaxation.
Okay.
The latency of a preloaded tendon is effectively near zero.
Zero. How is that even possible? I mean, even electrical signals take time.
Because in an elastic system, there is no new electromechanical signal required to initiate the movement. The structure is already loaded.
Mhm.
It's like a stretched rubber band hooked around your finger. The
Mhm.
energy isn't waiting to be generated. It is already sitting there, stored in the tissue, violently trying to return to its resting state.
Just waiting to be let go.
Exactly. The only thing keeping it from releasing is a tiny mechanical latch, a slight postural angle, or a minimal muscular block. When you remove the block, the elastic release happens instantly.
Instantly.
The physical release of the tendon takes maybe 30 to 100 milliseconds, and that speed is significantly faster than a heavy muscle can physically alter its shape.
So we are comparing a 300 millisecond delay for a slow, heavy muscular movement against a 30 millisecond release for the fastest elastic movement.
Yes.
That means the elastic body, operating on internal energy, can be up to 10 times faster than the muscular body. 10
It's a
times.
massive difference.
In martial arts or any high-speed sport, that is the difference between getting knocked out and not even registering that a punch was thrown.
And the advantage isn't just in speed. The system is vastly more powerful, and this comes down to basic, unavoidable physics. The formula for power is energy divided by time.
Work over time.
Right.
So if you have a specific amount of potential energy stored in a spring, say the tendons of your arm and shoulder, and you release all of that energy in a fraction of the time it would take a muscle to generate it, the power output mathematically skyrockets.
Yes, because you are dividing the exact same amount of energy by a vastly smaller denominator of time.
This is where the biological examples the author cites become incredibly illuminating.
They really do. The text points to the mantis shrimp and the chameleon's tongue as perfect natural representations of this mechanism.
Oh, man. For you listening, if you have never gone down the rabbit hole of looking up a mantis shrimp strike on YouTube, you need to pause this and do it.
It is mind-blowing.
It really is. These tiny crustaceans have these specialized, club-like appendages. When they spot a crab they want to eat, they strike it so unimaginably fast that the sheer speed of the club moving through the water actually boils the water around it.
It creates a cavitation bubble.
Yes, and when that bubble collapses, it emits a flash of light and temperatures briefly rivaling the surface of the sun. It is mind-blowing. But the key point is, muscle alone physically cannot do that.
No, it can't.
Muscle tissue physically cannot contract fast enough to boil water.
The mantis shrimp is not relying on a massive bicep. It is using a biological catapult.
A catapult.
Yes. It uses a latch mechanism in its exoskeleton to lock the appendage firmly in place. Then it uses a relatively slow, weak muscle to gradually pull back and load an incredibly stiff saddle-shaped spring in its arm over several seconds.
Building up that potential energy.
Exactly. And when it finally releases the latch, all of that painfully stored elastic energy unloads in microseconds.
Wow.
The chameleon does the exact same thing with the collagen sheets in its tongue to snatch flies out of midair. These creatures generate force that far exceeds what their raw muscle mass could ever produce alone.
Obviously, humans don't have mantis shrimp claws.
No, we don't. And the author is highly intellectually honest about that limitation.
That's good.
They admit that the physical margin of return in large, heavy human muscles is more modest than what a tiny shrimp achieves. We aren't boiling water with our fists.
As cool as that would be.
Right. But the underlying physical principle is identical. By loading the fascia and tendons and then releasing them abruptly, we can bypass the speed limits of human muscle.
That explains a core tenet of internal martial arts. I mean, why a release strike is always vastly heavier and more damaging than a push strike.
Yes, precisely.
If I push my fist into a heavy bag, relying entirely on the contraction of my tricep and chest, I am strictly limited by the biological speed limit of my muscle fibers.
You're paying that temporal tax.
Right. But if I load the fascial network across my back and shoulders, drop my weight, and release my arm like a whip, the power output is exponentially higher because the time factor has plummeted.
And there is another incredible tactical benefit to this system that the text highlights, and it becomes apparent when you start stringing multiple movements together in a sequence.
Okay, like a combination.
Yes, if you are operating a culturally trained, muscular, stop-and-start body, every single technique you perform requires you to initiate the muscle, accelerate, brake to a stop, reset your balance, and then reinitiate the muscle for the next technique.
You are constantly paying that 300 millisecond latency tax over and over and over again. Punch, stop, reset, kick, stop, reset.
Exactly. But with this elastic piston-driven system, the movement becomes a continuous flow. Because you aren't starting and stopping distinct muscular contractions, the movements blend seamlessly into one another.
There's no pause.
Zero reinitiation delay.
The energy just gleeds from one loaded spring into the next.
Which makes the practitioner virtually unreadable to an opponent.
Oh, I bet.
In combat sports, elite fighters learn to read the reset.
The breath, the dropping of the hands.
Right. When an opponent finishes throwing a heavy combination, their weight settles, their muscles briefly relax to recover, and they subtly telegraph their next intention. The latency gives the defender a window to counter.
But if a body is operating entirely on elastic recoil and gravity?
It never actually comes to rest, it never settles, it just fluidly deforms from one shape into another, constantly retaining its internal pressure.
That sounds terrifying to fight.
It is. There is nothing for the opponent's brain to read because nothing is ever resetting. The practitioner can change direction, turn, or explode into a new strike at any instant, with absolutely no muscular effort required to start the new motion.
Okay, that paints an incredibly vivid picture of the speed, the power, and the lack of latency. But if this movement is truly continuous, and it never stops and starts, what does it actually look like in three-dimensional space?
Right.
Because the text makes another massive paradigm-shifting claim in this section. The author argues that in this system, there aren't thousands of different martial arts techniques to memorize.
No, not at all.
There is actually only one inborn movement pattern.
This is perhaps where the ISAI system parts ways most aggressively with almost everything else you might have trained in your life.
Really? Just one?
Yes. Traditional martial arts view movement as a massive catalog of separate, distinct techniques filed away in your brain. You have a file for a jab, a file for a roundhouse kick, a file for a hip throw.
Yeah, that's how it's caught.
But the author views movement not as a list of techniques, but as a single underlying inborn geometric pattern that expresses itself through various trajectories depending on the context.
Depending on the context, okay.
The text refers to these trajectories as fish play.
Fish play. Okay, we have to unpack this. Why fish? Are we talking about swimming?
We are talking about topology and geometry.
Okay.
Imagine a single continuous closed lobe in three-dimensional space. A curved path that rises up one side, arcs over smoothly, and descends down the other side.
A figure eight kind of thing.
Somewhat, but it's the exact fluid, three-dimensional path that a fish traces when it turns smoothly in the water to change direction.
Oh, I see.
The term isn't about mimicking a fish swimming. It is about the fundamental shape of that trajectory. It is an unbroken curve with no sharp corners and no sudden stops.
Let me play devil's advocate here.
Please do.
If there is truly only one pattern, and it essentially looks like a fish turning in a fluid curve, why doesn't every practitioner of this system look like they're doing a weird undulating fish dance on the mat?
That's a great question.
Right. Because if you tell me there is only one universal movement pattern, I expect everyone in the gym to look exactly the same.
That is the beautiful paradox of fish play, and it comes back to the idea of a deformable topological surface.
Deformable surface.
Think of a thick sheet of elastic rubber. It is one single continuous object, but you can push it, stretch it, twist it, compress it, and it deforms smoothly to meet whatever force is applied to it.
Right.
The fish play trajectory is exactly like that rubber sheet. Its parameters, the amplitude of the wave, the timing of the release, the tight curvature of the archy, they change continuously to meet the physical situation.
So that single continuous pattern can fold and compress so tightly that it suddenly becomes a straight explosive punch.
Yes.
Or it can expand and widen out to become a massive hip throw. Yeah. But structurally, under the hood, it hasn't changed its fundamental nature at all.
Exactly. It is the exact same engine, running the exact same code, just interacting with a different physical obstacle.
It's like, imagine you have a giant piece of raw dough.
Okay, right.
You can stretch that dough out into a long baguette. You can twist it into a complex pretzel, or you can flatten it out into a pizza crust.
Yes, exactly.
To a hungry customer walking into the bakery, those look like three entirely different unrelated foods. But the baker who made them knows it is the exact same batch of dough, just subjected to different spatial parameters and forces.
That is a phenomenal way to conceptualize it. The underlying material is identical, And because it deforms so freely and adapts to the environment, the movement usually does not look like that canonical, sweeping fish shape to the naked eye.
So you can't just see it.
No, the wave is often folded up and spent entirely internally inside the practitioner's body.
There is a line from the text that really struck me regarding this. It says the pattern is in the cause, not the appearance.
That distinction is absolutely crucial. You cannot see the mechanism directly just by sitting in the bleachers and watching someone spar.
Right.
To a naive observer, an ISAI practitioner throwing a punch just looks like a normal guy throwing a relatively normal punch.
But it doesn't feel normal.
Not at all. If you put your hand on their chest, or if you hold the focus mitts for them, you feel the crushing difference immediately. To see it visually, you have to be highly trained to read the kinematics, the subtle trajectories, the lack of muscular bracing, and the velocities of the joints.
It's exactly like how a structural engineer can look at the sway of a massive suspension bridge during a windstorm and immediately read the internal forces acting on the steel cables, even though the forces themselves are completely invisible.
Exactly.
The engineer knows what to look for in the subtle deformations.
The engineer reads the cause by analyzing the structural effect.
Okay, so let's take a breath and look at where we are. We have these incredible, almost science fiction sounding claims. We have muscles getting entirely out of the way of the load. We have tendons acting like mantis shrimp catapults.
And hydraulic pistons in the spine.
Right. We have a single, deformable, rubber sheet geometry of movement called fish play that supposedly dictates everything from a step to a knockout punch. It sounds amazing in theory, but a highly skeptical listener, the kind the author invites, has to be wondering, is this actual peer-reviewed biology, or is this just one incredibly articulate martial artist's grand, unprovable theory of everything?
This is the moment in the text where the author earns a tremendous amount of intellectual respect.
We really do.
They explicitly provide what they call a seam, a clear, transparent, heavily marked line separating mainstream, established vertebrate biology from their own personal, unproven hypothesis.
They're not acting like a guru asking you to take the entire package on faith.
Not at all.
I love that. So let's examine the established biology side of that seam first. What is the hard science backing this up? The text claims that the human body, from an evolutionary standpoint, is built to move first and do absolutely everything else second.
And that hierarchy is undeniable mainstream vertebrate biology. The human backbone did not evolve millions of years ago so that we could sit upright in ergonomic office chairs and type on laptops.
As much as we use it for that now.
Right. The spine is older than lungs. It began in the primordial oceans as the central organ of the fish's swimming wave.
The fish's swimming wave.
Yes, and the text leans heavily on the published research of evolutionary zoologist David Carrier. Carrier studied the biomechanics of running lizards and made a fascinating, counterintuitive discovery.
I found this part of the text absolutely mesmerizing.
It is.
Carrier found that the lateral bending of the lizard's body, the side-to-side wiggling motion that actually drives its running stride, mechanically squeezes its lungs.
Yes.
When the lizard bends to the right lung compresses and the left lung expands. The air just shuttles uselessly back and forth between the two lungs. The lizard literally cannot breathe fresh oxygen while it is sprinting at top speed.
From an engineering perspective, that sounds like a catastrophic design flaw. I mean, why would nature design an animal that suffocates itself when it runs away from a predator?
Because it shows biological priority. The architecture of the skeleton and the muscular system serves the mechanics of locomotion first and foremost. Breathing has to negotiate its way around the movement.
Locomotion is the primal, non-negotiable imperative of the organism. You have to move to survive. Furthermore, the hard science shows that the incredibly complex machinery required for coordinated movement sits far below the conscious brain.
We are talking about the central pattern generator, or the CPG.
The CPG is a localized spinal circuit, a bundle of neurons in the spinal cord that can produce full, complex, coordinated rhythmic locomotion entirely on its own, without requiring any real-time feedback or instructions from the brain.
Wow.
This isn't theoretical. It has been decisively demonstrated in laboratories using cats and lampreys. A lamprey eel can swim perfectly well navigating water currents, even if its brain is entirely surgically disconnected from its spinal cord.
That's incredible.
The spine inherently knows how to swim.
And we humans still carry the neurological fingerprints of this ancient machinery inside us. It is the exact reason why, if you hold a tiny, newborn baby upright over a table so their feet touch the surface, they will instinctively make perfect stepping motions.
Right.
Their conscious brain hasn't learned how to walk yet. They can't even hold their own head up. But the ancient spinal layer of movement is still there, operating beneath our conscious, mature control.
So the foundation is rock solid. The idea that movement is fundamentally rooted in the axial spine, that we possess these deeply inborn locomotor engines, and that our tendons can store elastic energy, all of that is established incontrovertible science.
But where is the seam? Where does the hard science end and the author's theory begin?
The hypothesis.
What is the author admitting they can't prove in a lab?
The author clearly and explicitly states that the idea of exactly one universal inborn movement pattern, the concept that every single human movement is just a deformation of fish play, is their own proprietary hypothesis.
Okay, so that's the leap.
Yes. Mainstream science proves that the biomechanical machinery exists, but no zoologist has ever published a definitive, peer-reviewed paper stating, all human movement boils down to this one specific fish trajectory.
So they admit it.
Totally. The author says, I have built my life and my martial arts practice on this hypothesis for decades. We can clearly demonstrate what it does on the mats, but I have found no scientific publication that definitively proves the geometry of fish play, and I will not pretend otherwise just to sell you on the system.
That level of intellectual honesty is so incredibly refreshing.
Especially in the martial arts and movement space, which is historically so full of massive egos, mystical claims, and just unprovable nonsense.
They're basically saying to the reader, the internal energy, the faster, stronger, less muscular biomechanical engine, that part is testable in 10 minutes.
All right.
You can prove that to yourself in your living room today. But the grand unifying geometric theory of fish play, that is my personal theory. Weigh it against your own physical experience and decide for yourself.
It completely dismantles the traditional dynamic of learning. You aren't being asked to blindly submit to a master or join a cult of personality or believe in invisible magic.
No.
You are being handed a physical mechanical blueprint and told to test the structural integrity of it yourself.
So for you listening, as we wrap up this journey, what does this all mean, Phil? We have traveled a long way from the foggy, mystical mountaintop to the sterile, measurable reality of the biomechanics laboratory.
A very long way.
We've talked about pressurized spinal pistons, tendon springs, electromechanical latency, Golgi tendon organs, and ancient spinal circuits. What is the ultimate practical takeaway of this deep dive into the ISAI framework?
The deepest takeaway here is a fundamental, radical reversal of how we culturally think about self-improvement and physical training.
A reversal.
Yes. In almost every single traditional school of thought, whether it's a martial art, a modern sport, or just lifting weights in a commercial gym, the underlying philosophy is relentlessly additive.
Additive. Building on top.
Exactly. The assumption is that you are born as a blank slate, or worse, a flawed vessel, and you need to constantly add technique upon technique to build a better, more capable body.
You have to learn the jab, then you memorize the cross, then you drill the footwork. You spend years heavily layering these external cultural movements on top of your natural biology.
And even in the traditional internal schools, they treat the energy as this separate higher attainment. It's treated like a mystical graduate degree you only get to access after you've spent a decade mastering the physical additive moves.
But in this text, the philosophy is beautifully subtractive.
It's entirely subtractive. The author argues that natural movement exists by means of internal energy. They are not two separate things. They are the exact same mechanism feeding each other in a continuous biological loop.
You do not need to add anything to your body to achieve this power.
No. You already have the tendon springs, you already have the pressurized cavities, you have a constant supply of gravity, and you have the inborn spinal pattern.
Your only job is to aggressively remove the cultural interference.
Yeah. You are unlearning the brace. You are subtracting the bad habits, the muscular tension, and the societal posture laid over you since childhood until the incredibly efficient, powerful body you were actually born with is finally allowed to express itself again.
You know, we started this deep dive talking about the mystical, untouchable magic of martial arts lore, and we ended up uncovering a reality of biological catapults, hydraulic spinal pistons, and the raw mathematics of milliseconds of electromechanical latency. We've stripped away the silk robes and found the raw, undeniable machinery underneath.
And it is undeniably beautiful machinery. It is far more elegant, powerful, and sophisticated than the clumsy cultural habits we've spent our entire lives forcing upon it.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over today as you step away from this and go about your daily life. I want you to pay close attention to your own mundane daily movements.
Notice the little things.
Exactly. Notice the way you reach across the table for your coffee cup. Pay attention to how you walk up a flight of stairs, or the way you unconsciously brace your shoulders and tighten your jaw when you sit down at your desk to answer an email.
We all do it.
We do. Consider this. How much of your profound physical exhaustion at the end of a long day isn't actually from the productive work you accomplished, but from the massive hidden metabolic cost of your own cultural movement?
It really makes you think.
How much energy are you burning just constantly fighting gravity with localized muscle tension? What if true power, true athletic efficiency, and true endurance isn't about hitting the gym to build more and more muscle, but finally learning how to trust your skeleton, load your springs, and turn the muscles off?
It fundamentally makes you wonder how much raw, vital energy we are wasting every single second, just desperately holding ourselves together against the world.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning your assumptions, keep testing the mechanics of your own body, and we will see you next time.